2016 from Maharaj, and he joined ISKCON back in 1989 in Russia. He's a certified Bhakti Shastri teacher, and he's also a professional mediator. He specializes in short practical courses in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, which we're lucky to hear a little bit of Maharaj's insights and wisdom this evening. So I want you to please give your attention. If you come a little bit closer, if you want to, a little bit closer is always better. More people filter in the back. So please, let's give Maharaj a very warm Philadelphia welcome by raising our hands up and chanting Haribo, Haribo!
Hare Krishna. So it's my great pleasure to be back to Philadelphia Temple and see all the devotees I know and all the devotees I don't know yet. And I'm especially happy to see the senior Vaishnavas, Prabhupada disciples here. Big surprise for me to see His Grace David over there. So we'll chant Jai Radha Madhava and for a few minutes, and then we'll say something from Bhagavad Gita, and we'll be discussing one of the most important and relevant topics from Bhagavad Gita, which is discovery of the personal mission within the Prabhupada's overarching mission. Punjabi Bhakti Punjabi Bhakti Gopi Jana Jai Gopi Jana Girivara Bhakti Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Radha Madhava Punjabi Bhakti Radha Madhava Punjabi Bhakti Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Radhe Hare Radha Radhe Hare Radhe Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan Yagi ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyanandana Shubhakaya Chakshurandiratam Yadam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manavasya Sapitam Yanaputare Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Kadati Swami Padantikam Panchakapatarishya Kripa Sindhudevacha Pachitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Grabha Shiva Sati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Tamat Prema Puroi Purnimakshadiyar Mushubrusha Om Teganan Sadasa Sadasatmakam Krishish Sabhagavan Nacham Sime Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we will read from the concluding chapter 18 from Bhagavad Gita, which is the perfection of renunciation. So we'll be learning how to renounce this world in the right way, in Vaishnava style. And we'll be reading text 46. Yatapra vrittir bhutanam janasarvamadam tatam svakarmana tapam vyarcha siddhim mindati mannavaha. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. Purport. As stated in the 15th chapter, all living beings are fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Supreme Lord is the beginning of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra. Janmadhyasya, the Supreme Lord is therefore the beginning of life of every living entity. And as stated in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord, by his two energies, his external energy and internal energy, is all-pervading. Therefore, one should worship the Supreme Lord with his energies. Generally, the Vaishnava devotees worship the Supreme Lord with his internal energy. His external energy is a perverted reflection of the internal energy. The external energy is a background, but the Supreme Lord, by the expansion of his plenary portion as Paramatma, is situated everywhere. He is the super soul of all demigods, all human beings, all animals, everywhere. One should therefore know that as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, one has his duty to render service unto the Supreme. Everyone should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness. This is recommended in this verse. Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Hrishikesha, the master of the senses. And by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 12:7, Tesham aham samudarta, the Supreme Lord himself takes charge of delivering such a devotee. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the highest perfection. Yata pravrittir bhutanam yana sarvamidam tatam svakarmanam tam avyarchya siddhim nindati manavaha. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all-pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. So Bhagavad Gita is a unique sacred text because it's not dealing with one's, religious matters only. Because for many people, religion is something you do of your work, right? That religion means you come to the church, temple, mosque, synagogue, stupa, whatever it is, and you worship the Lord, and that's Lord's territory, and then everything else is your territory, right? But Krishna conscious approach is different. It doesn't make such a discrimination. And Bhagavad Gita is meant to help us to understand that the Supreme Lord is present everywhere. And that's why there should be no duality in terms of material and spiritual life. And interestingly enough, at present, the biggest challenge I see most of the devotees have, with very, very few rare exceptions, like Devideva Prabhu, for example, that they have work which has nothing to do with Krishna consciousness, and which is just meant to pay the bills, right? And devotees, they don't really enjoy that work at all. And even what you get paid for is ridiculously insignificant. I mean, it looks good, for example, comparing to Indian salaries. American salaries look more impressive, but American prices also much higher than that. And so basically, whatever you gain as your wages is just enough to pay your bills, right? And if you stop working, you're gonna die because you wouldn't be able to survive. And yeah, it's just enough to pay your mortgage, right? And interestingly enough, that the word mortgage comes from the word morgue, right? Just to indicate that you're meant to pay till you die. So it's kind of modern day slavery, and this is a very unfortunate situation. And actually Bhagavad Gita is meant to help us understand how to connect our spiritual and professional lives, how to put it all in one. And the next verse, which we haven't read, but which is very famous, and it is, at least the first half of the verse is repeated twice in Bhagavad Gita, and that is Shriyan Swadharma Vignan Paradharma Manushthitat, which says that it's much better to act according to your nature, to work according to your nature, rather than imitate somebody else's nature and do other people's business, right? It's better to fail doing what you were born to do rather than trying to do something which is not you. Swadharma, Viguna. So, that our dharma, our occupation is connected to the Viguna, to the combination of the modes, material modes of nature our bodies are created under, right? And so different natures are actually meant for serving the Lord. And so Srila Prabhupada was saying that he, in his years of preaching in Western countries, he gave us Krishna conscious knowledge and practices, but he said that 50% of his mission is not yet accomplished because the other part and the bigger part of his mission is to create what he calls Varnashram, or what Vedas call Varnashram, Dharma. And Varna means social position and Ashram means spiritual position. So Varnashram refers to social spiritual structure, work. And so, just for those of you who are not familiar, and for those of you who are familiar, it's still good to refresh our memory. The first purpose of ISKCON, and my conviction is that first things first, is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large and teach all peoples the techniques of spiritual life in order to check the imbalance of values in life and achieve real unity and peace in the world. And one senior devotee noticed that there is not even word God appearing in that first purpose, was to speak of Krishna. Because Srila Prabhupada's vision was all-encompassing. It was not limited to a religious tradition. It was meant for the whole planet. And that's why he many times expressed his genuine appreciation for any religious tradition, because our understanding is very simple, that God is one. There are no many gods. I mean, there is a hierarchy. There are demigods, but the Supreme Lord is one and the only. And every single bona fide tradition is to help people to reconnect with Him. And therefore, all the problems on the planet are not because people are practicing this or other tradition, but is that either people pretend to practice the tradition but they don't really follow it, or they're bluntly atheistic or materialistic and reject spiritual principles in one's life. And he was very clear what's the mission of Krishna consciousness, that is the Krishna consciousness movement needs many exalted, learned persons who will sacrifice their lives to revive God consciousness throughout the world. We therefore invite all men and women advanced in knowledge to join the Krishna consciousness movement and sacrifice their lives for the great cause of reviving the God consciousness of human society. You see, just to make sure that consciousness, not by religious propaganda, but by professional spirituality. And this is, if you think about it, this is what Bhagavad Gita is about. Arjuna, it's interesting that Krishna speak Bhagavad Gita to any Brahmana, because Brahmanas are not very practical people. But Kshatriyas are very practical people. They are the movers and shakers. That's why instead of talking that at your workplace, because Arjuna's workplace was the battlefield, you are meant to act according to the principles of Krishna consciousness. And that's why it's very important for us to do something to introduce spirituality at the workplace. And Yeah, sure. Prabhupada also mentions chapter 12 in the purport, and in the hierarchy of spiritual advancement is discussed, and the topmost level, of course, is to always think of Krishna, Mayava Mana, that's why my Buddhi there. But then he says, if you cannot practice that, then Abhyasa Yoganatato, then practice sadhana bhakti. Okay? But then he says, next level is work for me. And then if someone cannot do that, then at least you can sacrifice the fruits of your work for Krishna. And then even if someone cannot do that, then at least one can practice detachment and knowledge, and develop knowledge. The conscious then, why the cities under the influence of by bad assertion. But it's not full varnashmanas, Sanya, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is discussing, and this is very much connected with the first purpose of ISKCON. And so